I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTracker.com, and today we're going to install the Hotbodies Race Bodywork on our 2017 STG-R6 project bike. Okay, the Hotbodies kit comes complete with a seat pan, tail. It's got a plug for the tail light, I like that. Lower fairing, we've got two mids, one on each side, upper fairing, and front fender. The fender we're showing you on the bike right now is the carbon fiber fender from Hotbodies. Your kit's not going to come with that. We did that on this project bike only. It would be a fiberglass fender to match the rest of the bodywork kit. Okay, let's open up with a disclaimer, okay? Race bodywork is never as easy as opening up the box, spinning around in circles 3 times, throwing it up in the air, and it all lands on the bike perfectly. This always takes patience, time, and some creativity. And to be realistic, it doesn't matter that much what brand of bodywork you are installing. I've ran into issues with any brand out there, and I've always been able to get a good result from Hotbodies. Starting off with this kit, you can see we've already got it on the bike, and I'm going to show you every step I took to get this fit. And I would have to say I'm happy with every single thing except for 2 issues. I'm going to open up with the 2 issues. It includes this seat pan, okay? There are bosses up front to bolt it down. Realistically, there's nothing under this to bolt it to. I see 2 ways to work around that. I did fasten it back here, and it's held in place nicely, but the bottom of the seat pan is not resting against anything. This is meant to be a support to rest so that it is held firmly, okay? It's sitting against nothing right now, so in the end, that's gonna be really hard on the seat pan. When I come back, I'm gonna raise it up, and I wanna show you an idea that I think may work. Okay, so remember, this bike does not belong to me, so I don't wanna start trimming pieces off of it. What I would do, if I wanted to run this seat pan instead of the stock seat, and we're gonna install a stock seat which fit perfectly, I would remove this undertail temporarily, okay? That is going to get this piece right here out of the way, and that's going to allow this seat pan to sit down further, because right now it is being held in place by that, okay? It's catching literally right here, and I can't get it down any further. If the front were to sit down farther, this will probably make it to the battery, and then you could use windscreen well nuts right here at the forward tabs and the mounting holes back here, okay? Before you go cutting this off, which would be the step I would take, if I remove this and that worked out, I would then just take a grinder and just cut away enough so that this could sit flush, okay? You could do it a couple of different ways. You could maybe cut it here on a straight line so you could still kind of preserve that closeout panel look, or you could just trim it underneath here and allow that to sit down. For what we're doing, we're just gonna put the stock seat back on it, which fit perfectly. Issue 2 is on the other side. Okay, it's with this fastener right here, and God, you know, to be realistic, this particular fastener right here is almost a throwaway fastener. I could have installed this kit without putting anything here. And I'll show you what the issue that I had was, and then explain the corrective action that I took, which honestly, it's a good long-term solution. It's really not gonna be an issue. This, okay, it was on a severe angle, okay? So there would be no really just bolting that down. Okay, that wasn't going to work out because the bolt would have never sat flush. That was an issue with the molding. Maybe it was pulled too early. I don't know exactly what happened, or maybe they've modified the mold since then. Your kit may look a little bit different. So what I did here is I got a little bit creative, and I used a bigger hole. I've got a little spacer, got a little plastic washer, and the idea is just so that can kind of float on there and then be captured, and that you're not wrenching down on the fiberglass, just compressing it. In the scope of things, you know, is this a big issue? No, it really isn't, man. I mean, that's minor. At the end of the day, you could have just went like this and left this fastener out of here completely, and it would have been a non-issue. So if you just left this out, this would be filled, and It's gonna float a little bit here, but that's no big deal. You've got a fastener here, you're fastened to the bike over here, super stable. You know, this was just something that I wanted to address. You may just decide if yours ended up looking like that, or even if it didn't. Some folks also take the chain guard or the countershaft sprocket cover right off the bike and don't even run it. So you could just leave that wide open, right? It would mean nothing. Those would be the two gripes I had with the kit. Other than that, I like the fit. I like the design with the individual mid fairings. I decided to use rivet-on fastener backs. I'll give you a look at that. I felt that the rivet-on style was going to work better for this application. Show you what those look like. Right there, I drilled all the holes for this piece right on the bosses and the indentations that they provided. When I come back, I'm going to have the bike apart and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you the entire install. Okay, we're going to start at the back of the bike, the tail. This is that little closeout panel for the tail light. You remove your tail light, and what I like to do is, let's get this thing slid in there, okay? And you need to mark the holes before you drill, so you see kind of how I'm manipulating that to get it in there. Distort that plastic piece just a little bit, dip it over, line it up. I took a Sharpie, marked both of those, pulled it back out, and then using my Unibit, I drilled it. These are the stock fasteners that were holding the bottom portion of the tail light in place. You can see that pops right in there, easy peasy. Now we've got our tail section. You can see I drilled a hole right in the middle, right in the middle, right there, right there. Okay, nothing special. I'm using two of the fasteners that were used to hold the sides of the tail section on. And then here on this cross brace, there were two stock fasteners here that I removed. We're going to reinstall those in those forward tabs. This drops literally right on. Go ahead and get the fasteners all installed. Remember, don't tighten one down and then move on to the next. You want to get everything started finger tight first. Before you run anything down. And then also remember, you are compressing fiberglass, okay? You don't want to crank on this stuff because all you're going to do at that point is just destroy the fiberglass fairings. Put a reasonable amount of torque on it like that. See that? That's enough. So you can see those lined up really good. You know, it's interesting too because the tail is normally the part I do the most wrestling with. It seems like it's always the most adjustment is required to get a good fit on the tail. That was not the case here. This one literally jumped right on the bike. Stock seat, remember that's what I'm going to recommend you're going to run with this. I just think it's better. Okay, that's my opinion. I think it's a better fit. This tang needs to slide in under here. Your two seat bolts are in the back. Dip it in place, little downward pressure. And this works perfectly with that race tail, okay? Zero fitment issues. Like I stated earlier, this is really what I'm gonna recommend for most riders, you know, is just roll with that stock seat. You're gonna have to play around with that seat pan if you wanna get that on there and get it working well, but this all fit perfectly. Super happy with the tail. Okay, next up is the upper fairing. For the mirror mounts, drilled right on the indentations. Same thing for the windscreen. You can see I've already got the stock windscreen bolted right up. I mounted this on the bike before I drilled any of this stuff. I wanted to have it on the bike so I could really get stuff to line up to see where we're at. So we'll talk about that after I get this up. Main mounting point back here, you can see I drilled that right on the center. This has a clip that goes through it and attaches to the bottom of the ram air duct. That is important. You're going to want to drill that one. And then I drilled both of these because the mid fairings have a tab that use the stock push pin to attach right there. So I drilled each one of those. So to recap, for your initial fitting, drill here and here, here and here, go ahead and do your windscreen and hit this, but leave the female side of the fastener undrilled until we get it on the bike. From here, the fit, super happy with this too. They did a good job. Go ahead and get it over your forks. You're going to have options in terms of how you want to fasten this to your upper fairing stay. If you guys have watched my bodywork videos before, you're going to know that I'm a big fan of cable ties. Love using those here because they break away really easily. We installed these driven mirror eliminators on this bike during some of the street bike segments. You gotta admit, that just looks gorgeous. So you go ahead and get those in there, get your cable tie, whatever you're gonna do, and just leave it semi-loose so you're able to manipulate it while you fit the rest of the bodywork. Next up, we're going to put the fastener in here on the side of the bodywork. I want to show you what I did here. I have got a stack of these tapered head fasteners, these plastic washers that have a tapered seat, and then these spacers, okay? It's important that this bodywork sits out a little bit from the bike, so what I do is I go through my stash of fasteners and spacers, and I find the right distance. In this case, it was, I think that one's, I don't know, somewhere around maybe a quarter, maybe 3/8 in height. I'll show you a little closer on the other side. And then go ahead and get this one started. And go to the other side and do the same thing. You can see the spacer I'm using, that's about 10 millimeters, okay? I do have those RNG frame sliders installed on the bike too, and it looks like those would work with the race bodywork with the design that Hotbodies has. So just like the other side, I'm going to get this started and leave it a little bit loose. You'll see I'm able to manipulate this stuff now and make sure that the bosses they had, which were accurate, that I'm able to drill at those points. But I don't want to start drilling this because of the multi-piece design until I begin to bring it together on the bike. Next up, I'm going to install the lower fairing itself. Your mounting points to the bike are here, 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 and here. And you can see I drilled all those on center. I actually ended up drilling each one of these on center as well. The mid fairings ride behind the lower and on top of the upper. So effectively, this hole would need to be big enough that you're able to pass the deuce fastener through and have a little additional room to wiggle it around. So let's go ahead and install the lower. We're using all the stock mounting points here, and for this, I had stock hardware that I removed from the motorcycle that I used for installation of the lower fairing itself. As with any of the other pieces, just go ahead and get it up there. Let's get it started, and we'll leave it a little bit loose. Starting on this side of the bike, and then we'll cross over. Once I get all these fasteners in play, a little bit easier once the other side is supported. That hole lined up perfectly. Before I turn the bike back over to Ryan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through my fastener stash, and I want to make sure that all throughout the bodywork I'm using these tapered head with those plastic concave washers. Really like that stuff. It works really well for the bodywork installs, and you have a nice matching set of fasteners. It's something at some point we're hoping to have kits available on the site, like a universal style, to help you guys get this done. So Okay, you can see the lower fit fine. That went right on. Now here are those mid fairings. Slide that into position, like so. And like I said earlier, at the end of the day, I was literally able to drill the mid at all the points where they had it dimpled, which made the installation go pretty darn smooth. I'll be honest with you, multi-part kits, they can be kind of tricky. And I'd have to say that, yeah, this took a little bit longer, and I had to use more fasteners than we would on most kits. But in the end, the process itself went pretty darn smoothly, with an end result that I think pretty much anybody's going to be happy with. Like so. We already showed you very early on the decision that I made here. Realistically, you know, you could just totally leave that. That lower is supported in so many places, so is the mid and the upper. That fastener is kind of a throwaway. This is just an idea that I had. I was kind of hell-bent to get something in there, and that was the final solution that I came up with. You know, so if you find yourself in a similar situation, that's totally going to work, right? It's got it held nice and firmly, and you can see got a really good fit. Got good clearance everywhere. You're able to leave the kickstand on, which that is not always the case with race bodywork install. Go over to the other side now. Let's take a look at that. Okay, the mid fairing, before you drill any holes, remember, you've already, you know, these are pretty fixed already. You've made decisions here. You're committed to it. Let's go ahead and slide the mid into position. Let's evaluate where they have the holes dimpled. That's what I did with this. And in the end, I was able to basically drill it right where they had it dimpled. Got a good result, was super happy with it. Show you those. Once again, I ended up drilling where they had it dimpled. They had two other dimples, like they had intended rivet fasteners with this. The spacing on those, right? I found I was drilling a little closer to it. We've got a video on how to do rivet style deuce fasteners, but the dimple for the pass-through part of the fastener was fine. Remember to make sure that you drill the hole big enough so that you're not forcing this through the fiberglass. It needs to go through relatively easy. That holds true for the female portion of the fastener as well. Okay, if you drill that with super tight tolerances, you're going to have nothing but problems. Before you tighten all these fasteners, see, this is loose. You want to leave this stuff loose so you can manipulate a little bit. Get all your fasteners, backers riveted on, and let's get this thing into place. And let's start putting fasteners in. Something that I will point out right now that you're going to notice as you ride the bike, okay? Once you get your install done, first couple of times you put it on, you're going to notice, man, I really had to kind of tug on it a little bit here, tug on it a little bit there. What the bike needs from there, and it gets better and better every time you take the bike to the track and ride it, and it sits in the sun, it gets hot, and it cools down. You're going to find that when it's sitting there and cooling down, okay, it gets hot and then it cools back down, you're forcing it into that position. It basically molds itself to that in the end, so you'll find as the bike gets older, it becomes so much easier to take the fairings on and off the bike. I've noticed that with every kit I've ever installed. So when you get to that final part of the install, don't drive yourself crazy focusing on millimeters, okay? If you gotta tug a little here, you gotta tug a little there, don't worry about it. Go ahead and ride the bike. Take the bike to the track, let it sit in the sun, and you'll find that it won't be long. It'll get a lot easier. Go ahead and run our fasteners down. Like so. A couple of things to note. We've got that clip that we're going to install right here into that stock ram air duct. I would rate this as a fairly important fastener. You want that holding it there. Okay, right under here there's a tab that's on that mid that allows you to fasten it to the upper. I had drilled those. After I did the full install, I lined them up, made sure they were good. I drilled them off the bike. We're reusing the stock clips. Lock right in, like so. Okay, there you have it. There is our install. I think I covered all the steps pretty clearly. We already showed you installing the carbon fiber front fender, the stock. The fiberglass race fender would be basically the same deal. Not quite the same quality as the carbon, but those typically fit well. I think run the stock seat's a better option personally. For most riders, when you open this multi-piece kit up and you see, oh man, I've got an upper, I've got mids, I've got a lower, I've got a tail, I got this, I got a seat pan, it can be a little intimidating. If you follow the steps that I outlined, you'll easily get the same result. Remember, this stuff doesn't just jump on the motorcycle all by itself. A little leprechaun doesn't come in the box along with the bodywork and install it for you. This takes a little creativity, patience, and effort. But looking at this, a good result is achievable. And remember, of all the bodywork that's offered, Hotbodies sells at the most affordable price, and I really believe it delivers a solid value. I'm Brian Van, SportBikeTrackGear.com.